What a beautiful picture. I call this my butcher block altar, chopping the potatoes or scrubbing the dishes, that opens up a river in my heart only to pour out at his feet. If you eat in this place, prepare to indulge in food seasoned by the tears of my gratitude.
Upkeep your beauty maintenance. Men, husbands, they're very visual.
Do you think this is her real voice?
I don't know, ice skating. And number 5, and I mean this in the best way possible.
Hello lovely people, my name is Emma. Welcome back to my channel, and welcome if you are new. TradWives. What's all that about? If you're not familiar with the Tradwife phenomena, first of all, I envy you for your ability to disconnect from viral news and media. Don't even worry, don't even joke yourself, I'll bring you right up to speed. The Tradwife movement is kind of what it sounds like. It's about being a traditional wife. I'll complain about this later, but essentially the tradition that is being referred to is 1950s American propaganda. You know, the posters of women having a lovely time baking bread and looking after children in the home. Specifically, it's about being a homemaker, not going out and working, not having any other childcare, being the sole child supporter in your family. It's about cooking a lovely meal for your husband when he comes home and keeping the house clean and tidy, and that's your entire life. Now, I believe in equal right to choose whatever you want in life. If you're not hurting anybody else, I think you should be allowed to do whatever you like. So why do I even have a problem with this concept of Tradwife, with the Tradwife phenomena? I'll tell you why. First of all, it's what I just hinted at, that the majority of at least viral Tradwives are just cosplaying an era that didn't really exist. They're cosplaying an era of propaganda, which I find problematic in general. Those that fail to learn from history are doomed to repeat it, right? I think the majority of the, again, viral Tradwife kind of movement is fundamentally classist. I suspect it's probably racist. If it's not actually racist, like actively racist, it's at least very white. There are Tradwives of colour, but the majority of viral content is blonde, white, American women wearing gingham and little cardigans. And again, there's nothing inherently wrong with any of those things, but it kind of belies the problematic nature of some of it, which again we'll come to as we go. So fundamentally classist. It's also frequently become a sort of gentle pathway to the alt-right. You'll know this if you're familiar, if you've seen any of my videos about people like Classically Abby, stuff like that, where a general audience, a more mainstream audience, can be drawn in by just advice on how to dress in this particular aesthetic that is very pretty, advice on how to maintain a beautiful home, and tips for new mothers and things. And all of a sudden, that becomes God made two genders, and feminism is destroying society for some reason. Not for some reason, because these are conservative values, and you can have those values without being alt-right, but it means that people who are alt-right can use it as a very easy lure to their side of the political spectrum. There is also a sort of concern, a kind of base level concern around women's rights and women's choice that I have, which I think will be better explained with an example. So we're going to take a look at Ballerina Farm, and that should hopefully, I'll be able to sum up my concerns there with some examples which will make more sense. Should I be wearing I feel like I should be wearing a flower crown right now. This might be a bit too autumnal, although it is just turning autumn. Is that better? That feels better. That just feels more right. I know a lot of you will be thinking, how is some super woke liberal city slicker like you even begin to understand the lure, the appeal of Tradwives and traditional living? Let me tell you, I do understand there is a very real and very mainstream appeal to this kind of living, to the homesteading phenomena. I grew up in a very rural part of the country compared with where I live now. Friends had horses and chickens, and I worked in a cafe when I was about 17. The work would be interrupted by things like having to move the goat, and more than once, cows. There's a field of cows nearby. This is a very, very rural little village. There were about 3 regular customers and then just busloads of elderly tourists. There's a field of cows that would regularly break out and just fill the one road that went through the village. And so all of the tourist traffic would just stop because they wouldn't know how to deal with a cow in the road and would be too scared to do anything. And my co-workers and I would quite often just watch through the window and laugh. Oh, how we'd laugh. We would have to drive really slowly down that road that took me to work because there would often be donkeys and foals just grazing at the side of the road. Living in the city, I often miss that. I miss the trappings of a seemingly simpler life, you know, the joy of being with nature and the countryside. The allure of a simpler life, a simpler time, is very real, although homesteading, as I will explain in a little bit, is not a simpler life. Serene music over a beautiful video with a woman in gingham is maybe not the most accurate portrayal of what that lifestyle is really like, so we'll get into that. Similarly, I think a lot of the allure of being a trad wife is just the desire to have more time. More time to do all of the things that you have to do. Life is so complex and complicated now. So much of our lives is typically taken up by work. It would be beautiful to have more time to look after the home, to be able to decorate it nicely. I bought a new vacuum cleaner a few weeks ago, and I've been mildly obsessed with keeping the house dust-free. Most people would love more time to spend with their children. Finally, a lot of people just like the aesthetic of that period of 1950s American propaganda. And that's fine too. There are plenty of people who dress in that style and collect vintage cookbooks and, you know, furnish their house exclusively retro style. You can do that without succumbing to the trad wife life, but it certainly makes up a part of the appeal. So the 1950s housewife ideal. American 1950s white suburbia, specifically. There are many issues here, right? First of all, the most obvious being issues of class and race. This is very much an aesthetic taken from middle-class white America of a certain period. In the 1950s, lots of working-class women still worked because they wanted to or they needed to. A lot of the happy-go-lucky housewives that we're supposed to be looking to, you know, to emulate this lifestyle from were addicted to alcohol and drugs. You might know that Valium was referred to as mother's little helper. Women were expected to look a certain way all of the time, be submissive to the husbands, which was, of course, a gateway for husbands to treat their wives how they liked, and not all of them would have done, you know, the best job. There was a condition recognised at the time called housewife psychosis, which I feel like reveals a lot about the satisfaction that women had with their lives in that situation. So anyone with a vague eye on history, anyone who's looking at history without rose-tinted glasses, knows that this lifestyle, this 1950s American beautiful lifestyle, not only is extremely restrictive, not only was it only for a certain class and race of women, but it also wasn't the idyllic dream that it was in, you know, Hoover commercials. Because of course it wasn't. It's cosplaying an era of propaganda. And if you want to cosplay that because you just like the aesthetic, you go for it. I love a retro Coca-Cola sign as much as anybody else. One of the most important things about being a good trad wife is looking beautiful all the time. Sorry, I don't make the rules. One of the best ways to do that is by looking after your skin, which you can do very well with today's sponsor, Geology. Geology is an award-winning skin, hair, and body products brand. They have over 10,000 5-star reviews, they've won 35 awards. It's ludicrous. Geology skincare is effective but simple. There's no fads, there's no nonsense. You simply take a 60-second diagnostic quiz, tell them about your skin and your goals, and Geology's team of dermatologists will prepare a skincare regime just for you, which is then delivered straight to your door. No fuss, no muss. I love my routine. As you've probably heard me gush about before, one of my favourite things is this very simple numbering system. For example, here we have my morning routine. Step 1, wash face. Step 2, brightening formula. Step 3, tone control morning cream. With SPF. Once again, the best way to look after your skin is to protect it from the sun. It is no joke. That ball of fire up there is very serious. I have the same thing with my evening routine. I have my face wash, then I have my eye cream, and my night cream. If that wasn't enough, I also have this simple little card that tells me exactly what to do and when. It's really good if you're a little scatterbrain ADHD bean and you don't know how to routine. Everyone's like, you gotta have a skincare routine. And you're like, but how? Just Geology, look at thing, see number, do number, order. Skincare. If you sign up using my link down below, you get 70% off your personalized skincare trial set. That's over $49 worth of products for $15. Plus, you get up to 50% off of add-ons. If you're looking for a new skincare routine, I cannot recommend Geology highly enough. Use my link and code in the description and in the pinned comment. Get yourself 70% off that skincare trial set. It's a really good deal. They're great products, nice and simple and effective. Thank you very much for listening and to Geology for sponsoring this video. So I was just looking at this Instagram that I found called the TradWives Club, and it's all It's all pretty much exactly what you'd expect. I enjoyed this one that says, it's not a niche, kink, or trend, which kind of betrays that maybe it's a little bit some of those things. The true spirit of a tradwife is rooted in tradition, not an algorithm. Except again, that tradition is just propaganda of a certain era aimed at white middle-class American women. It just seems dishonest not to acknowledge that, or deliberately wearing blinders to pretend not to see that. I don't know. But this post reminded me of another problem I have with this. When he doesn't eat seed oils, reads ingredient labels, wants his kids homeschooled, supports home births and stay-at-home mums, and drinks raw milk. One of the comments, the top comment says, when he gets TB from raw milk. So this is one of my other problems, okay? I missed this off the initial list because this post just reminded me. Again, with it leading to kind of fringe political beliefs, these tradwife ideas, these tradwife accounts can be a sort of gateway to weird conspiracy thinking, such as a rejection of modern medicine, modern education. There's no reason you can't be a homemaker and a happy, traditional, stay-at-home wife and send your children to school. Maybe you were homeschooled, maybe that worked perfectly for you, maybe your children are homeschooled for specific reasons and that is for the best. It's not my place to judge. In general, homeschooling can be risky, and I have spoken to far more people who have had bad experiences through being homeschooled than people who have had good. Sending your children to school is a way to get them properly socialized, to, learn a broad range of topics. A lot of the time when people are homeschooled, especially in the traditional wife sphere, they are schooled in a particular religious education that might miss out on some of the important sciences. There's a whole big separate discussion to have about sex education. The other thing that struck me here is the home births. And again, this is going to come into, I'm going to next show you Ballerina Farm, because Hannah Neilman, who, again, if you're not familiar with the sort of tradwife phenomena, you might not have heard of, she went extremely viral for being, again, the face of this sort of tradwife community. And I just want to highlight one more sort of slightly disingenuous aspect of this tradwife life, a slight hypocrisy that I tend to find here, and I've complained about this when we've talked about people like classically Abby before, which is that these people seem to, while espousing a non-working, home-centric life where the man works and the woman stays home and looks after children and cooks bread, they also seem to run their own social media business, which is probably contributing significantly to the finances and also keeping her busy, giving her additional purpose. It just seems a little bit hypocritical, especially when it's people like classically Abby who condemn women for wanting careers at the same time as she has a podcast and books and a weekly mailing list and writes a blog, ludicrous. Let's just introduce you to Hannah Neilman.
My name is Hannah Neilman. I am Mrs. American 2023. I am a mother of 7 children, almost 8. I'm expecting a baby in...
This is an 8-month-old video. She does now have 8 children. The majority of them home birthed.
In December, our Christmas baby. I'm also a business owner, a homesteader, wannabe homesteader, learning all those things. I was once a professional ballerina. My husband and I are first-generation farmers. Neither of us grew up on a farm. We never had any livestock. We had this dream to raise our children on a farm and to really bring awareness to what it takes to get food on the table. And also educating people that you can do little things in your own space, in your own lives, to contribute to what you're eating, whether that's, having a sourdough starter and making your own sourdough bread.
You understand the appeal immediately, right? She's lovely. She's honest about being a business owner. She's not some, hick, hillbilly, whatever, stereotype. She was born in the city. She was a dancer. They've decided to take this up. They're admitting being completely new to this thing, this homesteading idea. And they're interested primarily in showing what it takes to bring food to the table and provide for yourself and the little things you can do at home. Sounds frickin' delightful. Why was there any kind of controversy or drama around this woman? It all comes back to a Times article interviewing Hannah. Meet the Queen of Tradwives and her 8 children. The article kind of suggested that it was not as idyllic a circumstance as she might portray, as the family might portray online. And in fact, that it might not have been as much of a choice as you would expect. Before I go off on too much of a tangent, let's address the home births part. She's given birth to the majority of her children at home with no pain relief. So that's one of the things that, not all, but a significant number of the Tradwife sort of content creators kind of advocate for. Again, it's this sort of slippery slope to a conspiratorial rejection of modern medicine. Why wouldn't you want to be in an environment with medical professionals who have been trained and are experienced in doing this every day of their lives, who know what is best for you, who can provide you with pain relief in, what can be an excruciating circumstance, where if anything goes wrong, you are in the right place to receive help immediately. It's horrible to think about. You'd like to imagine your birth being, the ideal kind of circumstance, but things can go wrong with any medical event. So for me, there's not really any basis for this beyond just the cosplaying this 1950s kind of idea. And in actual fact, in the 50s, in fact, let me find a real statistic for you. In the UK in 1955, 33% of births took place at home. So it wasn't even the majority of women in the 50s that were having home births. This is an even earlier tradition, and the further you go back into that tradition, the more medical consequences people were suffering. We have this medication, we have this medical science for a reason. It's only a good thing. The advancement of medicine is only a good thing, and the fact that the Tradwife ideal is counter to that is one of the most worrying things for me about it. It's very big pharma, scary, evil. Part of that is probably with it being rooted in a sort of American tradition where big pharma kind of is evil, but the idea is modern medicine, evil and scary. You're much better off having your seed oil and giving birth at home. And I just think that's generally, you can give birth at home and do it safely and have expert care with you. Personally, I would rather be in a hospital with pain medication and all of the latest scientific advancements surrounding me, where I know that if something goes wrong, there's a surgery room 2 doors down. That's just my opinion. One of the worst things about the sort of viral conservative social media is this rejection of modern medicine, this harkening back to better times when medicine was poorer and women died giving birth. I think that's very negative. What I think was really interesting, and one of the, again, sort of not controversial, but one of the sort of surprising things for fans of Hannah's was that when she was talking about giving birth to her children, she spoke of one of her children having a hospital birth because her husband wasn't there, or she had a hospital birth and her husband happened not to be there. It brings up some questions, but we don't have answers, so. And she said that for that, she received an epidural, which she called kinda great. So instantly there's a hint of whose choice is it to have these home births? Now we know that on one occasion she had a birth in a hospital and took pain relief and enjoyed that. One of the benefits of modern society, you don't have to take the bad with the good if you're adopting this trad lifestyle. You can be a homesteader and have a hospital birth for your children. So the other thing is the Times profile wrote that it was difficult to talk to Neilman, to Hannah, on her own, partly because she has 8 children, and so they were interrupting her a lot, and that she often looked to her husband for help in answering questions. She spoke about her dream to be a dancer in New York City in private moments. Again, that brings up a lot of questions that we can't answer without speaking to Hannah, so there's no point making assumptions. So she said her lifelong dream had been to be a dancer, a ballerina in New York City. Instead, they got married after just months of dating, though apparently she wanted to wait, and then a short while after that she was pregnant. There's a couple of things here where we know, because of what she said, that the lifestyle she has chosen, the lifestyle she undertook from getting married onwards, was not necessarily always her first choice. And there's no reason to think that she didn't have a good conversation with her husband, or her at the time fiancé, and then come to that conclusion and decide that this was what she wanted and was the best thing for her. But there's also no way of us knowing whether that's true or not. And this is what I was sort of hinting at earlier when I said there's a concern around this, adopting this lifestyle of submissive wife, husband rules. There's no way for us as outsiders to know whether all of the women in these tradwife lifestyles are really heartily choosing it and are happy and content with it, versus how much might be driven by the husband who doesn't necessarily care for her best interests. I'm not saying that Daniel Neiman isn't a wonderful husband and that they might not be very happy together, but you could easily see how one could fall into a life where you end up not really responsible for any of the decisions and become sort of boxed and trampled into a lifestyle, or at least, doing some things in your life that you don't want to do, like having home births. The Times article also said they have no childcare because Daniel didn't want nannies in the house. Again, Daniel's decision, husband's decision. Is that the best for everyone? I'm going to say no, because he also said that sometimes Hannah is so exhausted that she can't get out of bed for a week. That's bad. Maybe if that's happening, you need some child support. The other thing that sort of sparked a big controversy is it turns out that Daniel's father owns an airline, which kind of blows the whole, living off the land and making ends meet from the ground up, kind of blows that sort of out of the water. They are a Mormon family. You'll probably be unsurprised to hear there's a lot of children in the family. There's a religious precedent for living a traditional lifestyle and the man being in control of the household and making the key decisions. So again, that's going to be a factor in Hannah's life and the choices that she maybe makes or isn't able to make. So in promoting this lifestyle, I feel like we overlook the women that can be dragged into it feet first without wanting that. And by seeing that as an instinct of the, brilliant traditional lifestyle, she must be so happy baking the bread and it's all beautiful, because all we see are TikToks with stunning music and, the light filtering in on a baby cow. We're maybe overlooking that some people do not want to have this lifestyle and have been dragged into it through any number of reasons. Could be anything from just upbringing, culture, religion, all the way through to having an abusive partner. And we're kind of glorifying this in a way that ignores the potential of those people being out there, and I find that troubling. I find this specific problem very hard to word properly, so I hope that made any kind of sense. So that can be a concern, and that's kind of rooted in the main, problem with any sort of viral trend, any kind of online phenomena, which is that pictures ain't reality, son. It's easy to dress up in traditional garb, set up a tripod, and take a beautiful photo, but that's not the reality of the life. I enjoyed this Guardian article, which I'll link for you down below, which talked about the kind of slapping a pretty face on what is actually an incredibly difficult lifestyle. They make it look so lovely, this 19th century drudgery. The reality of homesteading is precarious and not pretty. Drought, mud, animals getting sick and dying. What one homesteader told me is, the daily game of what the hell is under my nails? Shit or blood. I also thought this part rang true. Even when it's just a homesteader saying feminism makes them sad, or suggesting scrubbing dishes glorifies God, it tends to celebrate a narrow vision of life. White, straight, Christian, cleaving to traditional gender roles and family structures. As a friend said, I'll get fascinated by a woman baking bread, and then she starts talking about how feminism ruined women's lives. Here's Wilson Family Homestead with just a beautiful picture of them and their gorgeous surroundings. The feminist agenda makes me sad. Anytime, whether it's the feminist agenda, the gay agenda, I don't understand all these agendas we're supposed to have, other than, equal rights. Spring Hill Homestead, what a beautiful picture. I call this my butcher block altar. Not just a place I serve by making food for my family, but also a place of laying it all down. There's something about these acts of kneading the dough, chopping the potatoes, or scrubbing the dishes that opens up a river in my heart only to pour out at his feet. The simplest things that rev my soul like nothing else, of any greater magnitude could. If you eat in this place, prepare to indulge in food seasoned by the tears of my gratitude. Chopping potatoes makes me cry because there is so little going on in my life. It's fine. If you want to glorify God and it makes you incredibly happy and emotional to chop potatoes. I like hoovering, but I feel like if you're at that extreme of emotion about doing normal human activities like chopping vegetables, I don't know. There's something about that screams are you okay? To me. I'll link another article for you down below by Open Democracy. I thought this one was really good too. Appealing to the importance of maintaining tradition is one of the ways in which nationalist rhetoric claims an essential and largely ahistorical version of culture. The trademarking of tradition introduces the language of nationalism. Traditions are frozen moments in history arbitrarily chosen from the cultural repertoire as the authentic expression of the national collective. What a brilliantly worded way of expressing what I struggle to articulate. I think this every time I see an Instagram, a YouTube, whatever, a TikTok, that describes themselves as traditional woman, traditional wife, traditional husband. Which tradition? It's all tradition, going back in history to any time. You could be a traditional Amazonian woman if you wanted to, and there probably are accounts doing that. But the fact that there is this sort of slight consensus, particularly among the alt-right, the ultra-conservative, on what this tradition is, and the fact that it is ahistorical, that it is built on a propaganda image, what's the purpose of that? Again, doesn't that just provide such a nice, gentle introduction to white supremacy, to the importance? Again, we were talking about this wannabe tradwife woman recently who was talking about how white Americans aren't making enough babies, and sexism, and just, a lifestyle that appeals to a certain class and race of men, and women are falling for that by the droves because there is an appeal in this entry-level homesteading, more time to spend with my children, etc., etc., that does lead down this weird white nationalist, anti-modern medicine, anti-education kind of rabbit hole. Here's another woman that went very viral, I want to say a year or two ago. She was on TV, it was everywhere. Her name is Estee Williams, and she makes me laugh because she is the most... I've said about 5 times that I believe a lot of these women are just cosplaying a certain look, right? They're cosplaying a 1950s propaganda housewife. She is that to the max. Bleached blonde hair, she's always got her lipstick perfectly done. She's all in pastel, gingham, little cardigans. It's laughable. This is Estee Williams' How to Become a Traditional Wife, Part 1.
How to become a traditional wife. Number 1, embracing ultra-traditional gender roles into your marriage.
Ultra-traditional gender roles. We're not just choosing a very specific tradition here, but we're going hardcore. You know what that means? Bible.
The man, he is the provider, the main breadwinner. He goes out of the house and works. The woman, the wife, she is the homemaker. She takes care of the home. She takes care of herself, and she does the cooking and the cleaning.
It's weird that it's said in text there that God made the two genders different for a reason, that whole thing, but she didn't say it. It's sort of interesting, like it was an afterthought, like, oh, better remember to make this a bit more Christian, and then people will like it more. I don't know, maybe that's a reach. Very gender normative, very heteronormative. There is no room for a same-sex couple in this trad wife phenomena. You can't have 2 trad wives married to each other. You would be banned because it is a right-wing conservative phenomena.
Number 2, and I cannot stress this enough, you have to marry the right man. If you marry a guy who in your dating life, he showed abusive and control tendencies, this is a disaster waiting to happen, because when you become financially dependent on this man, he will abuse all of that. So,
well, one sort of fucking kind of obvious, doesn't really relate to being a trad wife. I would assume that this relates to being a trad wife because divorce is bad. Because typically, again, a lot of this comes from a religious background and divorce is the big no-no. So I would guess that's why this is a special part. Make sure you marry the right man. Most abusers like that won't reveal those tendencies until you're already financially dependent on him. And doesn't that just reveal a flaw in this hardcore, ultra-traditional lifestyle? That because of this lifestyle, if you marry the wrong man and he turns out to be an abuser, it's too late. Because you'll be completely dependent on him in everything in your life. Well, maybe there's a flaw in the lifestyle then. No, you have to magically know in advance exactly what he's going to be like.
Make sure that you take your dating life very seriously. If you are not dating to eventually marry that person, you're wasting your time. Number 3, learn to cook, learn to clean, and learn how to host. I probably got in the kitchen at like 3 years old with my mom, and she taught me how to cook, how to bake. She taught me how to clean, although I could definitely progress on that.
Was that a dig at her mum, not like being good enough at cleaning? That was a little bit weird.
Life skills that can benefit you and your family forever.
Again, Everyone should learn how to cook and clean because you have to be a functional adult at some point in your life. This lifestyle would suggest that men don't need to learn those things. But I would say, even if you're trad husband and you have a lovely trad wife, you don't know what could happen. She might explode. Terrible things can happen, and you need to learn how to do the very basics. Especially if you have children, you need to learn how to be able to cook. What if she has a family emergency and has to go away for a few nights? You're going to need to know how to cook. You're going to need to know how to operate the washing machine, right? There was that viral thing a little while ago where they asked a bunch of the famous conservative men if they knew how to work a washing machine, and they were like, no, that's woman's job.
I would rather do the dishes, but I'd prefer if she just did both of them.
I'm not sure in our entire marriage if I've ever done a full load of laundry.
I have not done anything around the house for 40 years. I've been a completely useless, but it's clear that if I had to choose, it would have to be dishes, because she was just out of town for a month and I actually called her up and said, how do you do laundry?
Don't be a moron. Just learn how to do the very basics that you need to live a regular human life. Doesn't matter if you're a man or a woman or if you're non-binary. Learn how to use the washing machine. Learn how to cook. You don't have to love it. You don't have to be doing sourdough starters and taking beautiful Instagram photos and praising God while you cry over your potatoes. Everyone should learn those basics. It is a benefit of modern society that more people do learn those things. Because traditionally men would learn less of that sort of thing. Despite I've always thought it's interesting that cooking has been the woman's task, the woman's role traditionally, but being a professional cook or a chef is sort of a man's role. I've always thought that's kind of interesting. So there must always have been some men who learned to cook.
Number 4, you have to have something for yourself. As a traditional wife, you are spending a lot of your day catering to others, whether it is your husband or your family, and it's important to have something that is meant just for you. This could be sewing, this could be painting.
That is so 1950s Americana. It's just it's such a cosplay, it's such a costume, and it's so revealing. You're going to be spending all your time is going to go on other people. If that's what you want and it works out for you and you can do it in a healthy way, fine. But you have to have something for you because you're going to go crazy, or you're going to spend all your time doing shit for other people. So at least pick up sewing or something. It's got to be something traditionally feminine, but for the love of God, you've got to get a hobby. I think it just betrays how repetitive and mundane this particular lifestyle could be. There was another article I saw where somebody tried adopting this lifestyle for a week. And, her husband sort of went along with it, and they have kids and things. And instead of going to work for the week, she stayed at home with the children. And she described some of the ups, some of the positives, getting to spend more time with the kids, making exciting meals and taking more time for that she hadn't done before. She also expressed a sort of feeling of kind of emptiness, and the conversation revolving around her husband and her not knowing if that was part of him playing the role or just because she hadn't done anything worth talking about. And then he described after the fact that he felt like an outsider on his children's lives. He was more sort of observing her and the children, their family unit, and him being separate. So I feel this sort of, you've got to have something for yourself kind of highlights how problematic that can be.
I don't know, ice skating. Find something that is just for you and put that in your life every single day.
I think that's a good idea in general, again, along with learning the basics of being a human being, like cooking and cleaning. Yeah, make sure you do something for you. There can be a lot of pressure, especially on mothers, especially because of this idea of the best traditional lifestyle, and the best way to be a mother is being super dedicated to other people. Even if you're not a trad wife, it's very easy to be a yes man and kind of live for other people, especially if you are with someone who is a bit more domineering and I am the man and things revolve around me and what I want to do. It's good advice in general to have things for you, but also you don't have to live your whole life for other people, desperately waiting for the hour when you can have a glass of wine and do your sewing. Because to me, that sounds really sad.
And number 5, and I mean this in the best way possible, upkeep your beauty maintenance. Men, husbands, they're very visual, and I'm not saying put a full face of makeup on.
Do you think this is her real voice? Men, husbands, they're very visual. I wonder if this is her. She's definitely not speaking at full volume, so that might be a part of it.
I don't know, ice skating. And number 5, and I mean this in the best way possible.
But I suspect that this Estee is so far into this cosplay that when she turns on the camera, she puts on what she thinks is the best Tradwife voice. Upkeeping your beauty maintenance and looking pretty all the time. It's not about looking beautiful and having a full face of makeup all the time, but for some reason it is important to look great. And here's my main problem, right? Because there is no problem. In fact, I think it's ideal to be happy with how you look. And things like having a routine, it's also just better for your body and your skin to look after it regularly and properly. And if part of that is about how you look because that affects how you feel about yourself, then fine, I think that's great. But she says immediately it's important to always look nice because men are very visual, because your husband will want to see you looking pretty. And I feel like, and I hear this a lot in not just Tradwife sort of, conservative TikToks or whatever, but I feel like this is a problem that because things like TikTok and just, viral content in general appeals to younger people, and that this is going to be like people who are watching How to Be a Traditional Wife by Estee Williams. My brain is like, Estee Lauder. They're people who aren't married yet. And I feel like this idea of, looking a certain way all the time it's really setting you up to fail. Because the reality of a relationship, if you're in a long-term relationship, if you live together, especially if you're married, you see each other at your best and your worst. You're going to see your partner fart in the middle of the night while their hair's all scrunkled and their face is all red from lying on the pillow and they're like... that sounds gross, but that's the reality of a long-term relationship, is you can't always look your best. The idea of adding a pressure of having to make sure that your skin is always good, your body is always good, that you're dressing to complement your body and gender all the time because you need to be perceived a certain way. This, if you go back to the tradition that this stems from, women were expected to wake up several hours before their husbands so that they could get ready and make sure they looked nice, so that they wouldn't be seen looking ugly, aka normal. Unless they genuinely have arsehole husbands, I'm going to say that in actual fact, the reason that these Tradwives, these viral Tradwives that post pictures to Instagram or post regular TikToks, the reason that they always look so beautifully put together is for social media. I don't think it's even really for their husbands. Call me a conspiracy theorist if you like. That's what I think.
On every day, but I do mean to pull yourself together and to make sure that you look presentable, whatever that may mean to you. For me, full face of makeup. I love house dresses.
What's a house dress? I've heard that term before. Hold on, what's a house dress? A type of simple dress worn informally at home for household chores or for quick errands. So I was going to mention before, something I've thought is strange about this phenomena and this idea that you have to dress a certain way. Credit to Estee, she says, this is just for me. It's about what that means to you. So we can thank her for that. That's a good thing. I've thought, again, this is part of why I think that this, Tradwife thing is so much of it is just cosplay, it's just a costume. Because in reality, if you were going to be a Tradwife in the modern world, you'd probably want to dress in modern, comfortable, maybe breathable clothing if you're going to be doing chores and stuff. I gather that that's the point of the house dress, and there are probably modern companies that make house dresses for that purpose, so that's fine if that's what you want to wear. But in my mind, it feels like if you were going to be a really dedicated housewife and you're running around after your 5,000 children and doing all these chores and running to the grocery store, why don't we see those women on Instagram wearing joggers and tank tops? Modern, gym-style fabrics. Why don't we see that? Because it's a costume. Because it's not about what's actually most convenient for the lifestyle. It's about the aesthetic, largely. That's what I think, anyway.
Make sure you are keeping up with your beauty and yourself. You are fit, you are healthy, because you and your husband will benefit from this.
Again, just good advice overall. You and your family will benefit from you being healthy. No shit. Again, just all people. I'm halfway to being a perfect Tradwife already. Apparently it's just common fucking sense. And dressing in pastels. Let's have a quick look at part 2.
How to be a traditional wife, part 2. Number 1, proper budgeting. I think this is so important, living on one income, because most of us traditional wives are not living like the housewives of Beverly Hills or anything, nor would I want to. I quite enjoy this more simplistic way of living, and learning to budget is a proper life skill to learn.
Thank you, Estee, for bringing me on to a point that I'd almost forgotten about, which is one of my main points usually when I talk about any kind of trad wife or conservative lifestyle advocate. Money! Money, money, money makes the world go round. I wish it didn't. Capitalism. Most people in the modern world, however much they might want to be a stay-at-home wife or a stay-at-home husband, because that's allowed as well, most people can't afford this lifestyle. And again, it's another problem with the portrayal of how it looks on Instagram and everything looks so beautiful. Part of that, as we've discussed, is because these people who are viral content creators are viral content creators. They're running an online business. And the money from that is going to be a significant impact on the lifestyle that they are living. Most people just can't afford to support a family on one income. You know, in the section about attracting the right man, she should have added rich. You know, it really helps if your husband's dad owns an airline. Like, that's just a fact of this, and why I consider this whole thing to be sort of classist. And it wouldn't be a problem for me so much if the majority of the tradwives didn't also portray that as the right way to live. You know, you're classically Abby's like, this is the godly way, this is how we're meant to be, this is how we were created. Men are supposed to do this, women are supposed to do this. This is how you should be. Most people fucking can't. Like, wouldn't it be great if we could both stay at home and just do what we want whenever? Yeah, but that's not life, baby. Somebody's gotta make the bread. Even if you learn how to budget, which again is just a life skill that everyone should learn. This just goes on my list of things for everyone, every basic adult. Cooking, cleaning, looking after yourself, budgeting. With the best will in the world, shut up. Like, yes, you're right. That is a valuable skill. And if you are going to try and live on a single income, you're going to need to know how to budget. Even so, this betrays a level of privilege that is prevalent across all of the tradwife people, accounts, wives, all of the tradwife content creators. Generally, they have a husband or his family or whatever. There is somebody providing a substantial income that most of their viewers would not hope to achieve. If I stopped working, we wouldn't be able to live here anymore. Matt and I share the bills, the rent, because it's 2024 and shit is expensive. And we could budget till the cows come home, but we just wouldn't be able to maintain the lifestyle we have now if I stopped working. If you have children, if you have mouths to feed other than your own, and all the expensive shit that goes along with that, they're growing out of their shoes every 5 seconds. You know, it's crazy how expensive raising a child is. Most people just can't do that on a single income. And it feels like there ought to be some kind of acknowledgement of that. Gosh, it was one of the articles that I read on this topic. It might even have been the one that I mentioned earlier, where again they quoted somebody saying basically a lot of the women who aspire to being a tradwife are sort of basically actually aspiring to the concept of universal basic income. People like, classically Abby, espouse that this lifestyle is the one true godly way to behave, is the best for society, blah blah blah, refuse to acknowledge the elephant in the room that they are extremely privileged in being able to afford that lifestyle. Also refusing to acknowledge the hypocrisy in running their own business and that contributing to their income, because you're supposed to be a stay-at-home wife actually, and you're kind of working all of the time. So yeah, that's one of the main problematic things I feel about the tradwife sphere life, is that it just doesn't acknowledge the privilege that you need to be one of those elite tradwives posting the beautiful pictures. It doesn't show the reality of what something like homesteading is really like. They're never going to post a video of the local livestock vet failing to save the life of a cow, mucking out horse shit. Hannah doesn't post pictures of her lying in bed with her makeup half done going, I'm staying in bed this week because my life is so hard. It's just unrealistic, it's dishonest. There is a very narrow pool of people who can live this lifestyle as successfully and joyfully as it is portrayed. And even then, we're never going to get the full story. We don't know how content they really are. If it's that important to take up a hobby like sewing just so you have something for yourself, if you're crying over chopping the potatoes, how happy, how content are you really with this lifestyle? You can grow your own herbs, you can have raw milk. Why do you want raw milk? I don't pretend to understand the raw milk thing. Like, pasteurization exists to kill harmful microbes. So again, that just seems like, the other flaw in this, which is it leads or can lead this Tradwife, but painting it as a beautiful, lovely thing, it can lead to conspiracy thinking, alt-right thinking, white nationalism, It sort of feels problematic at its core. And I think that's because it's based on unreality. It is, as that article earlier put it, ahistorical. We're sort of pretending that this is a tradition from a better time, and it's just not. So, from the very outset, it's dishonest. And that's why I think it's just layers and layers of problematic ideas.
Number 3, and that is making the everyday routine seem enjoyable. Because as homemakers, we do the same thing quite often. And making it more enjoyable really will make this lifestyle.
Again, that just betrays everything, doesn't it? You're going to be doing the same things day in, day out. So if you want to live this lifestyle, you need to hack it to make it more enjoyable. It's admitting, without saying it, that this is boring, that it can be boring and unfulfilling, just doing the same things day in, day out. So listen to podcasts and take up sewing. I feel like probably what makes a lot of these women happy and fulfilled is that they have this essentially online business, that they're running social media. It's a job, especially if they're posting really frequently. That's a full-time job that they've got for themselves, and they've found something that works around the lifestyle that they want, being able to work from home and spend more time with their children. But it is kind of a hypocrisy. Like, they've managed to beat the system by having a job that doesn't really look like a job. I feel like this video went a little bit all over the place because I just kind of wanted to talk about my problems with the Tradwife lifestyle, whether it's the historicity of it, which is just invented, the slippery slope to conspiracies and alt-right values, the sort of general social media, Instagram, TikTok problem we have of, the videos and photos that we share not being representative of real life. The misogyny and the classism and the white nationalism that can be at the heart and the sort of origin of so much of this movement. I just wanted to kind of talk about all of those things and bring in some examples, and it might have turned out a little bit chaotic, so I hope that you followed that okay. I suspect the people that are most happy living a traditional lifestyle, a tradwife kind of life, are the people that aren't intentionally trying to be a tradwife. The people that aren't doing it as a form of cosplay, that aren't like, okay, I need to make sure my hair is perfectly like this, I need to do this. It's probably the people that are like, I want to be at home so that I can spend more time with my children, and I love baking, and I have a greenhouse. The people that are doing the trad life things because they love doing those things rather than trying to fit their life into this mold. I think you absolutely can live a sort of traditional lifestyle and be very happy, but I think if you're trying to do that because you're essentially following this movement, this trend, and you find that appealing, then that's going to be fraught with peril. Just simply fraught. Do let me know what you think down below. Give this video a like if you liked it. Share it with a pal. Share it with a grandma. Share it with your trad gran. Do consider subscribing if you haven't already so you don't miss future videos. If you want to hear more from me, you can follow me at Emma Thorne Backstage. I have a video over there where I followed a classically Abbey guide to dressing in the tradwife style. So if you want to see more fabulous trad outfits, check that out. If you like gaming or you just like listening to my voice and me being an idiot and failing repeatedly, you can follow me at Little Duck Gaming, where I post gaming videos. That is the channel I post on the most frequently, so do come and follow me over there. Similarly, I am live on Twitch. Sometimes. Life is busy. I'm sorry. That's all I can say. Do follow me at Emma Little Duck on Twitch. I play games over there. It's a good place to say hi live and just have a chat. Again, watch me fail and die and scream at horror games and, whatever you like. Whatever floats your boat. If you do want to support this channel, first of all, consider checking out Geology via the link down below. You can become a channel member right here, right now. You get comment priority and some silly little emotes and a little chick next to your name that shows that you're special. The best way to support this channel is via the Patreon. You get some video extras over there, early merch reveals, merch discounts. There's with your source stuff. You can go and check it out at Emma Thorne Videos on Patreon. With that, I must give a big old thank you and a shout out to my colossal quackers and giant chickens over on Patreon, especially Connla. God damn it, Connla! Was that good? Maybe that was too soft for my tradwife voice. Most importantly, have yourselves a very lovely week, and I will see you really soon.